Hello, Facebook, and anywhere else you happen to be listening to this recording. I'm Gail, the Legacy Lady, and you are listening to Legacy Live, affectionately also known as Legacy After Dark. And this happens at this time of day because it's in between when my kids go to sleep and when I go to sleep. Now, tomorrow happens to be Grief Awareness Day. And I had other things I was thinking about talking about tonight, and I decided that it would be, I was feeling this grief thing today. So that's what today's episode will be about. It's how being more aware of my grief and working with it instead of ignoring it has changed my life, and how working through my grief using the legacy recorder and how creating it helped me process my grief, work with it, and find ways to celebrate maybe isn't the right word, but acknowledge it and give it the space it needed to help me view my world in a different way. Because when we lose someone, that's what happens. Our whole world shatters. It changes, it morphs, it turns into something that we can't even begin to understand. The whys, the hows, the why me's, the why them's, all the things that come up that make us just completely crazy and just left aghast at how this could possibly happen to our family, how it could possibly happen to someone you love. And then internally, but whether we say it out loud or not, is why did this happen to me? Why did my life have to fall apart? And if you've lost someone close to you, you know that you would never wish it on anyone. And even though we would never wish it on anyone, we know that everyone at some point is going to experience this soul-ripping grief that happens when someone we love passes away. So while I have just learned that there is a National Grief Awareness Day, I am so excited that there is, and that it's something that people are able to have a conversation about, and that it heightens that awareness that everyone has some sort of grief story, whether it's right in the middle of our immediate family, whether it's a little bit more removed, or if it's something that happened in our childhood that we don't really remember because it was a grandparent, and you're in a stage of life where it hasn't happened yet, where it completely turns your world upside down. And unfortunately, we know it's coming. So remember that the people walking beside you on the street, the people you are walking with, they have their own grief journeys, they have their own grief stories, and every person deals with grief differently. There are numerous amounts of resources you can use. I've come across some amazing ones that I will put in the description of this video and the podcast when I put it up, and I'll also link to them on the website. So things like the Good Grief app, and taking part in days like Grief Awareness Day, and being a part of the groups that I hope I'm getting her name right, Angela Cartwright has put together surrounding this Grief Awareness Day, and really embracing all of the things that people have created in order to process their own grief. I firmly believe that when we create things like this, when we create art, when we create groups, when we create communities based around these massive milestones and events that happen in our lives, it's out of necessity. It's out of this need to deal with the grief, to process it, and to find a way to keep living, because we know the earth is going to keep turning whether or not we figure out how to function in this new world without someone we loved. So that's my little segment on grief and how I feel about grief. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how being more aware of my grief and working with it instead of ignoring it has changed my life. So I've said this numerous times in every, not every conversation I have. I'm trying to say it more often. And in almost every episode and every podcast, I try to say out loud that the legacy recorder is my grief journey. It is my creative tool that I've used to work with my grief, work through it, acknowledge it, and process all the things that happened from the time I was 17 until basically now, because I'm still doing the work every day. And I posted a post earlier on the Facebook business page for Legacy Recorder, and it's gotten, a huge amount of shares and views. And one of a common theme that's been happening on comments from people is that they have grief every day, and that and it's, I fully acknowledge that we have grief every day, and the people who know grief intimately, we have it every day. It doesn't go away. There is no vacation for these feelings. There isn't an end sight. It's just they're just different over time. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that, yes, we're having this awareness state tomorrow and acknowledging that grief is a thing and it's a human experience, but it doesn't negate or detract or say that grief isn't present in the everyday. It is not to say that grief is not, that grief isn't there every day for you. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm going to have to catch up on comments at some point. It was happening so fast. So this awareness of grief, acknowledging that it's there, for me was, and to stop ignoring it. I ignored it for a very long time because I didn't have time to process it. I didn't have time to deal with it. I was raising children. I was trying to figure out a marriage. I was trying to graduate from college, and I didn't have space in my brain. I didn't have space in my heart to really deal with the passing of my dad. And it's something that I still, looking back, I really don't think I could have dealt with it then either. And I couldn't have done anything differently along the way. However, it would have been nice if I had been able to process a little earlier. However, I'm so grateful that I've had the opportunity to create this writing system and this piece of me that has helped me deal with my grief and has helped me process it. I know I've said that over and over a few times, and I'm now currently looking around for the book. And as a self-published author, any author, you would have like a ton of copies of your book running around. And I do. So this is, it's backwards. Oh my gosh, it's backwards. Anyways, so this is the Legacy Recorder book. It is a small book. My idea was that it's something that you could fit in your purse, you could hand to someone, and it's simple. It has a small amount of my story, about my grief story, about how it works, about what I'm hoping you'll get out of it, and really more about what I got out of it and how it helped me. And then the rest of it is the process of how you can work with someone you love to tell their life story, and how you could also work with family to tell the life story of someone who's already passed. So one of the misconceptions I've come across with the Legacy Recorder is that people think it's only for people who are still alive. And the writing process is still the same if you are writing the life story of someone who's already gone. So I just wanted to remind you of that. This isn't linear. The legacy recorder isn't linear. It's something that can be used in a variety of applications and for any stage of life, whether we're just beginning, we're in the middle, we're at the end, or we're past the end. Yeah, so I just wanted to share the book, and it's available. You can buy it on Amazon as an ebook. You can buy it as a print copy. If you buy a print copy, I'll sign it and send it to you. And I encourage you to look at what I've created, not as a plea for you to use my content, but more of if you've been trying to make space for your grief, if you've been trying to ignore it, or if you have been ignoring it and you might be ready, then the legacy recorder might be a solution. And if it doesn't help, or it's not something you think will help, I have come across an incredible number of people who are doing some of the same work that I'm doing, and they're doing it in incredible, amazing ways that are completely different than what I'm doing. And like I said before, I know that everyone processes grief differently, which means we all need different solutions. We all need different methods to do the process, to work with it, to figure out how to function and how to piece back our pieces of our soul after that person's gone. And now I'm not on the other side because I'm still doing it, and I'm working really hard right now to not cry. And I promise I will put a trigger warning at the beginning of all of these. But I use legacy every day to help me be present with my kids, to help remind me that there's stuff that's here. Yeah, so that's all I have to say on grief. Tomorrow is Grief Awareness Day. There's really amazing things going on tomorrow. It looks like there's some online stuff. One thing that I am doing is I'm hosting a live writing workshop. I didn't know that it was Grief Awareness Day in the US when I scheduled this. So if you want to come and write a part of your story, you can write about anything you want. If you want to write about the person who you're grieving, go for that. If you want to write about the happiest day of your life, go for that. It's just an opportunity to take some time out of your day and to write a part of your story, or to help someone you love write a part of their story. The link for that is in the comments or in the description, and it's completely free. So, and it's online. You don't have to go anywhere. And feel free to invite a friend or a family member, loved one, whoever it might be. I sincerely appreciate you tuning in and listening to this episode, this podcast, and I look forward to seeing you or talking to you on the next episode. In the meantime, happy writing.